All right, so welcome back. This is the fourth in the series of episodes that we're doing together here at the Digital Tourism Think Tank, together with Travel Audience. And I'm really pleased that we've got a very distinguished panel joining us today. Just a quick introduction to myself. I'm Nick Hall, and I'm the founder of the Digital Tourism Think Tank. I'm really pleased that today's special guest, who we are interviewing and digging deep into how destinations are using data, is Gregory Shervington from Visit Jamaica. You're the regional director for continental Europe, and we'll hear more about what your role entails there. But I'm also very pleased to be joined by Elena Garcia from strategic marketing. You're the head of strategic marketing at Travel Audience, and Alex Rayner, founder of smartdata.travel, and he's also a sales partner for Travel Audience. So great to have all of you with us. Let's kick off with a little introduction. Tell us a little bit about what your role entails, and perhaps as we move well into the recovery period of COVID, how your roles have been impacted with the current situation.
Okay, so glad to be here and glad to be participating. As the regional director for the Jamaica Tourism Board, that is the arm of the government that promotes tourism and is responsible for our main economic viable resource, which is tourism. Recently, we did some surveys and so we're obviously accounted for well over 30% of our GDP, which is realistically higher than most other places in this world, you know. So we are the engines of growth for our country in that regard. And continental Europe, in that sense, is seen in Jamaica's category as a growing, emerging market. It's not yet in that key factor. Obviously, with Jamaica, based on our association or geographical position, we're closer to the US. So most of the historical and past has been associated with the US, but my drive and my forte and the strategy is to go forward and grow the European market to where it really should be and where it really has the full potential to be.
Great. And I know that you have certainly been working hard, especially on data, and not only data, but providing the right technology solutions to gather data as well. So we're going to jump into some of that in a short while. Let's head over to Alex. Alex, nice to see you again after so many years. We've known each other for a long time. Alex, tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and Smart Data does, and how you work with Travel Audience, and I guess in particular how this particular situation right now has changed how you work.
Sure, Nick, great to see you too, and great to be here with Gregory from Jamaica. Jamaica's an incredible destination. I've had the opportunity to visit Jamaica last year, and of course, Elena from my colleague from Amadeus. The Smart Data, basically, the objective is to take the data and make it usable and useful for decision making. And specifically, we're very focused on using the Amadeus data. And Amadeus, although everyone knows Amadeus as a travel technology company, what a lot of people don't know is that in the process of being a travel technology company, Amadeus processes 8.6 billion travel transactions every day. So that's the largest data set available in the world. And so when you have a destination like Jamaica, it provides a huge opportunity to match your demand, the consumer demand, with the capacity, airline capacity, for example, and so forth. And ultimately, especially now during the COVID crisis, data is the key. That's what gives you the information about where to spend your money, where to invest your resources, how to maximize the visitor conversions to a destination. So this has actually been the busiest months of my life, believe it or not, thanks to the COVID situation. But every government is asking for help and for understanding of how they can interpret the data so they can actually get through the COVID situation and position themselves to become even better and stronger after COVID-19.
Indeed. All we have is data, right? And we need to use every bit of data that we can get our hands on. And that's a mind-boggling figure when we think of quantity of data that you just shared about Amadeus. So, Eleanor, you're head of strategic marketing. So, obviously, working with a data-driven business right now is particularly unique time to be using that data and sharing that data. And I guess this has changed your approach to marketing, so you really share that knowledge. How have things been impacted from your side, and what has it meant for your job in terms of translating that data for clients and in all of your communications?
Yeah, absolutely. And also nice to be with all of you here. Alex already mentioned that a travel audience is mainly the core business of travel audience is advertising, but we belong to Amadeus, and Amadeus is a technology partner. We have all these transactions that raise thousands and millions of data. No, so absolutely, this pandemic has impacted us in the sense that we are really focusing our efforts into delivering what our customers and our clients really need today, no, which is information. So as you said, me as head of strategic marketing, I'm in charge of the strategy of the marketing of this unit, and I'm very much looking into the portfolio and the go-to-market and what we really need or have to offer to our clients, no? So absolutely, as we've all mentioned, I mean, this has impacted all of us, and we just need to put our brains into what is really needed today, no, rather than what was really needed 1 year ago.
Great, and you've certainly been doing that, and we're going to talk about some of the learnings from the recovery initiative in a little bit. But today we really want to focus on Jamaica. I caught up with your CEO a short while ago and heard about the amazing initiatives to create travel corridors and to be able to really gather and use data. So tell us, Gregory, how has your organization been using data when it comes to your own strategy and planning, identifying where there are opportunities and how you can tap into those, and how you can support that tourism industry that you rightly told us depends so heavily on tourism as an inbound, economy, outbound economy, should we say? How have you been using data to work with your strategy and planning in these very difficult times?
Well, in terms of utilizing data, I'll just give you a quick, as a new kid on the block in our association with relatively new with travel audience, Amadeus. We came on in the fall of last year working together. So we have been using data before that, in a sense that, you know, we've seen the transformation in the view that we've been relying on our tour operators, who are main drivers, but over the years they've become relatively in the marketplace about 50%. So there've been some missing gaps that we've never been able to capture correct data on, and such. We basically have been utilizing in the past more historical data to drive our strategy, which now has changed. I think with the emergence of the association with Amadeus Travel Audience, we're able to encompass so much more, the full picture, if you want to look at it. So seeing the bookings, as you know, Jamaica is an island, so the only way people can get there is mainly through air travel. So we're able to look at the forecasting, not just for 3 months, which a lot of times we would depend on our tour operators. We are able to look at it well into, you know, a year and beyond. And we're able to look at the full picture, so we could not find the foreign independent travelers who would be picking their own way through the travel spectrum to book their vacation. We can find that more readily. And in terms of that, we've been able to put together a lot of different plans in place. Overall, with the COVID crisis, we have been using data, of course, from the whole aspect of health and being guided properly by that and being successful at that, I'd say, because our statistics relative based on the World Health Organization stand at a very good standing as it is now. We've had just over 800 cases. We've had, you know, unfortunately 10 deaths, but it has been static at that number. And we've been maintaining it while opening back the island since June 15. And we've opened it again strategically using the data of, where incremental aspects of travel originate from, even where hotspots are, and how we measure that with the health protocol that is surgically targeted to those hotspots as opposed to the rest of the world.
Great. So that health data has been so important to manage the situation really well, and also manage the situation when it comes to visitors and all of the measures that you have to take there. And as you pointed out, having that full view on travel data is also really key. So has data such as air capacity been key to identifying what's happening in the markets, where there is recovery starting to take place, and what have you learned and seen through this?
Oh boy, you have a day or two. Again, I could see the transformation where in the not too distant past, we would be relying heavily on our historical, our arrivals that happened obviously the week before, or at the discretion of our airline partners to give us data. And you know how difficult that can be, because everybody is, in that sense, understandably. Again, with Amadeus and Travel Agents, we've been able to see the whole picture and strategically move into discussions with airlines. Where in the past, we would sit down with airlines and say, come to our destination because we exemplify the popularities that are there, but they want to see the facts and figures and the data. And a lot of them don't have even access to the full picture. So just last fall, we went on a road with Alex, and we were in many key areas. I won't divulge into the too many names and stuff like that, but we hit, and the response was relatively and exceptionally good, in terms of providing those data, showing the demand as opposed to the existing airlift, and showing the anomaly that exists and the gaps that need to be filled. That almost sort of presented the thing as a no-brainer. And even with that, post-COVID, we've seen that in the discussions with airlines. Yes, everybody is busy now strategizing as to where do we go, how do we start, where do we start, and that sort of thing. We still have that fresh in their minds, and even though we keep in contact in a minimal basis because we understand they're redeveloping and those are soon to come, we find that they are more facilitatory to the data that we had left with them and we had presented to them.
So that data really empowers your own strategy, but of course also the strategy when it comes to negotiating and discussing recovery together with the trade to start to build that back up again. So that's really, really an interesting angle to think about how we can use data not only to automate certain marketing processes and things like that, but also to empower us to have the right strategic conversations to get, in your case, to get Jamaica, back on track, working together with the trade. So Alex, I want to head over to you and just talk about that kind of industry and that trade angle. You work with many different destinations and businesses. How have you seen data? What's your perspective on data generally, and how the industry has been using it? Do you think the industry has been maximizing the potential of data during this crisis? Has it surprised you, perhaps?
The travel and tourism sector has a very long way to go in using data. I think Jamaica is one of the leading destinations in the world that is actually walking the talk, where they're actually using the data and making decisions, making smart decisions, and that's why Jamaica is exceptionally successful in their tourism. And all you have to do is look at last year. You basically, if you look at Europe to Jamaica, you look at capacity of flights, and then you look at number of passengers. Basically, the flights are full. Jamaica is in one of those unique positions where it needs to grow supply, and the airlines have to be woken up that there is an opportunity. People are connecting via America, having to stop over in Miami, for example, because there aren't enough direct flights. And so Jamaica Tourism Board has been proactive and approached the airlines proactively with data, saying, here is the opportunity. It's black and white. And one of the data sets that we in particular have focused on was the demand data. And the demand data comes from the online travel agents, the OTAs, and also the meta search websites. So we're talking everyone from Expedia to Skyscanner to Last Minute, etc. And when you have a collection of 300 billion searches around the world in a year, that's a lot of data. And then you can see exactly where is the demand for a destination. So Jamaica was able to pinpoint the demand from Europe to Jamaica. We could see the flow of how the visitors were traveling to Jamaica. We could see how many of them had to painfully transit through the USA, for example. And then we gave the opportunity to the airlines to actually introduce direct flights, which there is an opportunity for. So this is it's actually not rocket science. It's pretty straightforward, and you just got to make the time and do it.
Incredible. So actually, as we open up and as every single destination around the world thinks about their recovery strategy, I think what you've shared there is also we need to use the data and gather a really, really clear picture from the data, not only of the economic reality and in this moment, but of the economic potential that we could be leveraging and rebuild. And that means going out, negotiating, convincing, persuading, demonstrating, showing through the data where the opportunities are, and working with the trade to make that case for rebuilding those links to the destination. I guess, if we look at the situation that most destinations are in, we really have a blank canvas. So we have to say we're starting from zero, and we have to make our own case as to why our destination deserves those links, that product to be positioned and put back into the market. And I think what you've both shared there really shows, how we need to then take the data and go to the next level with that, which is where that kind of human negotiation strategy will always triumph when it comes to that last part. So I want to jump back to Eleanor, because this has been a very human conversation we've been having over the last few weeks with these Recovery Alliance series. And I want to kind of dip into kind of what you have been learning through this process since April, because as we launched the series, I know that one of the discussions we've been having with travel audiences, let's go out as soon as possible with this recovery data. Let's share what's happening, but let's also be mindful that it's an evolving and a changing picture all the time. So what have your learnings been, Eleanor, during this process?
Yeah, as we started seeing the domino effect of the pandemic, we all had a million questions and basically no answers. So as the team is very much in close contact with the customers, we knew they were in real need of information more than ever, as we are discussing. No? And Travel Audience and Amadeus, we are very active players in the industry and very committed to help and contribute boosting recovery. So that's why we decided to launch this initiative and help our customers with relevant data and insights. So we basically have been facing several challenges as we were moving forward. At the beginning, at the origin of the pandemic, we saw that speed to market was crucial, as there was absolute uncertainty. So we knew time was key. We had to act very fast and provide information as soon as possible and to be able to help as many customers as possible. Then, as days went by and things were changing from one day to another, as you know, we had to really look into the regularity of the provision of these insights in order to enable them to really track the changes that were affecting their markets and to be able to take specific decisions as time went by. And finally, as you can imagine, all markets are different. So there is an important factor, which was and still is, of course, which is personalization, as I'm saying, because there's no one size fits all. And as Gregory and Alex are mentioning, each market needs to understand what's really happening and to take the decisions, because there are no strategies which are the same from one demo to another. No, and we know this is, and you already mentioned, Nick, change is still going to happen. We know this is going to be an ongoing process still. And we are very happy to drive this together with our customers, and we for sure will continue supporting them in this complex journey and helping them in their decision-making process.
Yeah, and I think, as you rightly said, it is about supporting over time and working with those changes as they happen. So I guess going back to yourself, Gregory, you've got this kind of double role where you, on the one hand, have to work to rebuild the destination, use that data, put in place the right strategy, and as you've been doing, go out and negotiate with your trade partners to build back those links, and also then the marketing side of that as well, to target the right customers and to show them, that you're open again for business. But on the other hand, you have to work with the industry, the local industry, and you mentioned the GDP figure there is particularly high for Jamaica, so that industry needs to have that strong intelligence as well to understand what they need to do and how they need to prepare for this. So that's a lot of work that you must have had over the last few months and since the start of the year almost. What have your learnings been through this process at Jamaica, Visit Jamaica, and how will you apply those learnings going forward to continue to work your way through this recovery period?
Well, I think the most important learning is to rely on the science, and I think data is a major part of science in that essence. If anything we've learned from this whole pandemic is to rely on the science. Utilizing the data that we have been able to obtain and moving forward in the right strategic directions, opening the markets, or if we start from the beginning, closing the markets in strategic ways. Obviously we took part of our successes based on the measures we took, as the crisis emerged, and now dealing with the situation as we are seeing the decline. And we hope to maintain that in the best and scientific way. So we are critical. There are essential meetings that happen daily at the highest level, down to the, all the players are involved, hoteliers, the Ministry of Health, all the tourism experts are daily involved in these meetings that make critical decisions going forward. So it's reassessing and looking at the data as it emerges on a daily basis and making decisions based on that. So I think this critically puts us in a manner in terms of the importance to strategy in our daily lives, of how data can be utilized to change and to adjust our sail quite easily and quite readily. So I see where we're going to, maybe, there are always speculators within organizations. So I believe that overall, from the whole gamut of the tourism industry, our partners in terms of the hotels, our airlines, or all of us are going to be so much more in tune to data. And as Alex already pointed out, it has probably been his busiest period because so many people are drastically coming on board and demanding. So it would be a way forward with more people utilizing this critical resource and managing. And I'm pleased and I'm sort of optimistic, because if we utilize most of this resource, we will find that our results therefore will be more effectively generating based on the proper statistics and data.
Yeah, so I guess the message from your side there is really data on the science and the health data and what's that telling us, and to be very, very agile in being able to adapt to the reality of the situation and take those sometimes really difficult decisions, but also data when it comes to the markets and the commercial data and the opportunities, to be able to also be agile in your communications and your strategy to where there are opportunities, where you can target, and where you can open up and at what time. So that's a challenge that you certainly face there, which I think many destinations are starting to realize that they have to really be really strong with data on many different angles. I guess to jump back to yourself, Alex, perhaps for a closing word on this, as you work in many roles and across different organizations supporting them with data, what do you think are the key learnings that all destinations should take forward, both from the case of Visit Jamaica, but also from what we've been learning through this series with Travel Audience, and how crucial that data is as we start to make the right planning and strategy decisions?
Traditionally, a lot of the destinations have been looking at the past historical data, and which is very valuable. But even more valuable is the forward-looking data. Now, Amadeus has data looking at the future. We can see 12 months ahead in terms of demand. We can see 12 months ahead in terms of supply, which is your airline schedules, how many available seats there are, how many flights there are. And of course, we can see 12 months ahead with all the travel agent bookings. And when I say travel agent bookings, I'm referring to the bookings made by the global distribution systems, the GDS. So that's the data of Amadeus and Sabre and Travelport, all three of them combined. So when you can see where is the demand, how is that demand being translated into bookings by the travel trade, and how is the capacity changing into the next week, into the next month, and so forth, you can really kind of figure out what's the opportunity for your destination and which markets are moving and which markets are going to generate visitors for your destination. So the key message is you got to look at the forward-looking data, the future, and actually take that data and do something with it. Because if you can see that Europe is opening up and there's constant shifting of markets, when the UK now says if you go to Spain for a holiday, when you come back you get a prize of 14 nights quarantine. I mean, obviously that's going to turn people off from going to Spain from the UK. So there's an opportunity for another destination to promote in the UK. So monitoring all this data on a daily basis is essential, and looking at how airlines are changing their capacity and balancing that with the demand from each market is absolutely crucial, and that's going to separate the successful destinations and the ones that perform super well into the future.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add, which would probably substantiate the argument, is the sense that we're the only destination that has had a new route developed from Europe, with British Airways adding a route to Montego Bay, which quite boldly and quite post-COVID, where every airline is sort of contracting and only doing minimal, that speaks to the whole discussion that we had. That is the icing on the cake. That is the prize. That is the fact that it's winning.
So tell us a bit about that. So you've got a new route to Montego Bay with British Airways, and how did that come about? And what was the rationale behind British Airways' decision to put that route on? How did you support that?
I can give you the overview in the sense that British Airways obviously had the London-Kingston route, which is the Gatwick to Kingston route, which was mainly a ethnic route, meaning that it's mainly the Jamaicans who are living in the UK traveling back home in that regard. They have had the Montego Bay route earlier on in probably about 6 or so years ago, but they discontinued that. The Montego Bay route from Gatwick would be primarily a tourist-driven route. So it shows you that obviously, in terms of looking at that, we were able to negotiate with them and say, that it's basically time to come back. But the decision was mainly theirs in terms of their looking within their fleet and looking within their utilization and seeing what destination would be the best one to utilize the existing fleets that we have now. And that will start October 13th, and that will go through the winter period and continue on as we expect it to, you know. Gatwick being the hub to the Caribbean for British Airways, you know, we're also seeing increasing connectivity establishing with new, what I call new destinations, especially the Eastern European destinations, having flights flying into Gatwick as opposed to Heathrow. So we expect, and we prove to them the behind the gateway potential as well, you know.
That's
so
great.
Again, it's in the negotiate and showing what we're doing in terms of our strategy, looking towards Russia, looking towards other areas in the East, that with new flights coming into the London market, they could capture that as well.
So not only looking at recovery by reinstating existing markets, but also looking at how the markets are changing. So I think this is a really great example of how the demand is looking very, very different to how it was before. And there are opportunities in that. And both from a segmentation, but also a market potential there. So thanks a lot for sharing that, and good luck with that route as well. I think that's really positive news to see that airlines like British Airways are putting on routes that, you know, they haven't had before, and really creating new opportunities there. So they obviously see the potential and the efforts that you're making as a destination to also look after people's health and make this a COVID safe travel destination. Right. I think we really have been so historically used to looking back at data, sometimes not even from a year old, but sometimes 2 or 3 years old, as data has historically been very slow to come in through traditional means. But today we live in the age of immediacy, and what you've spoken to is both the need to make those day-to-day decisions and use the data on a day-to-day basis as it changes, but also to be able to look forward. And I think that's the key takeaway that I have from today's discussion, is not only to look at real-time and immediate data, but also to look forward at what the data is telling us in terms of the the capacity and the potential of different markets, and the data that that can help us understand that much better. So thank you very much to all three of you for joining today. It's been great having this discussion, and it's been really positive and uplifting to see the strong work that you're doing at Visit Jamaica, Gregory. So thank you for sharing that. And I think also it's been really inspiring to hear about, well, where there are opportunities which are not always completely obvious. So we spoke a lot about, the indirect booking patterns that people were making, and where there's potential in the market, and how it's up to us to use that data, go out, negotiate, and rebuild our trade and our industry. So we've got quite a journey